Hi, this is Brett Ingram, entrepreneur and award-winning product creator, and today I want to share with you the transformational power of taking action. So taking action seems like something very, very simple, right? Seems like sort of maybe a low-level activity. Well, yeah, just getting off the couch and doing something. And it sounds really simple. But if we actually unpack it, if we actually pull back the curtain and we look at all the things that happen when we start to take action to do something, it actually is quite profound. And it's important not to underestimate the value of just doing that. If you think about it in terms of the butterfly effect, right? So the butterfly effect basically says that if a butterfly were to flap its wings somewhere in your own proximity, it might cause an earthquake, in thousands of miles away. The idea is that every single thing that we do, or every single thing that happens, has sort of a reverberation effect, and it affects everything else because at the end of the day, we're all interconnected, right? The whole world, the whole universe is all interconnected. And so when one action or one thing happens in one particular place, it may ultimately affect things in other places as well. And so, the interesting ramification of this, or how it really sort of comes home to roost, is if you think about it in your own personal experiences and you go back through things that you've done, things that you've accomplished, and you think about where they started. How did you start? When did you start? Did you know exactly what you were doing at all times? Or at some point, did you just take action and then that led to all the rest of it? When I think about my own digital business that I, began 15 years ago, when I first got started in it, I was doing a lot of learning, but I wasn't taking a lot of action. I was, I guess, because the learning was an active thing. It's not like it was being fed to me. But at the same time, I wasn't doing a lot. So the work that I was doing, the action that I was taking, the learning that I was doing, while it was making me feel good about learning things, it wasn't ultimately producing much of an effect yet. And once I flipped the switch, and once I actually started to do things, even though I didn't really know what I was doing, I didn't have a high level of, skill or ability or experience or anything. Once I started doing that, then I realized, more and more things that I needed to know. And so it was in that day that things actually started to take shape. When I was learning everything, that's when I had the traumatic incident where I actually lost everything. I made an episode about that earlier where, I had lost my attaché case that had a zip drive in it with all the information that I had collected about running a digital business over the last 3 months. It was 3 months worth of work, research, ideas, everything. And in an instant, poof, it was totally gone. I no longer had that at my disposal. So I had to make a decision. Was I going to continue with it, or was I going to decide that, that was some sort of a sign and I shouldn't do it anymore? Well, obviously I kept at it. And that was one of the best decisions that I ever made. But the fact is, what's most important is that spurred me to take action. Because what I started to realize is, yeah, I had collected a lot of data and information, and I knew a lot, but I wasn't producing anything. I wasn't doing anything. And so to that end, I decided, it was super important at that point to actually get going. And once I started to do that, one thing led to another. And it's interesting because if I rewind back then, my very first digital business ventures were things like putting up a squeeze page to be able to build a list. And it was create an ebook that I could sell for $17 and use giveaway events to generate leads for my list and things like that. So it was all very, very simple stuff. And that's not where I am today. So the difference between where I started and where I got to all comes from the fact that at one point I took action and then that one thing led to another. So eventually I realized, okay, I need to get into something that's higher ticket than this. So I started doing done-for-you products and services. Well, the problem that I had with done-for-you stuff is you're exchanging labor, you're exchanging time for money. So again, you've sort of like bought a job. And so I did that for a little while, and it was a lot more profitable, but it also took me a lot more time. And then I realized, well, okay, this works, but it's not the most efficient way or the most profitable way to build a business. So then I transitioned into more info products. And then I realized, well, info products are sort of a commodity, and they actually take a lot of work, and then they always need to be updated. So then I transitioned into software, because you can sell subscriptions and you can, and on and on and on. But it all started with the initial taking action. And by the way, my podcast was no different. I started not knowing what I was doing, but I said, I'm going to start making some content, start putting it out there, and I'll see what happens. And I'll make adjustments along the way. And my very first episodes and my very first trailers and, all the different lead-ins and stuff, I evolved all of that. It's not initially what it was the way that it is now, because when I took action, I saw what happened. I adjusted to that based on my results, and I made modifications to make it better and better. And so, those are two examples in my own life of things that I did to take action that made a big, big difference. And that is a key distinction that separates people that have dreams and ideas but never get anywhere. I was at a conference and I met a guy and we were talking, and he seemed to know a lot about digital marketing. He was actually reasonably impressive. And so we got to talking, and we started talking about domain names. And he shared with me the fact that he had something like 600 domain names. I said, wow. So I started thinking in the back of my mind, this guy must be crushing it online, right? He's got 600. I realized he probably isn't using them all. So I said to him, well, how many of them are active, or how many of them have products on them? And he looked at me with a blank stare, and he goes, well, none. He bought all these domain names with all these ideas, and he had all this great energy when he was talking about the ideas, but he never did anything. All he did was register domain names and let them sit on his... So here he was. I said, well, how long ago did you start doing this? He's like, oh, about 3 years. For 3 years, all he did is collect domain names with ideas. I had been in the business 6 months or less than a year, and I had already accomplished more. And I wasn't some out-of-the-gate success. It took me a while to get going, but I had already done more than him because I took action. So there are a lot of benefits to taking action beyond just the simple lowest hanging fruit of, well, you're doing something. One is you build momentum, right? When you start to take action, action begets action. You start to feel a lot better and you start to want to do more. I do a podcast on a daily basis, 5 days a week. And if you run a podcast or you know anyone who does, you know that that's a tremendous amount of work. To be consistent and commit to doing an episode every single day, 5 days a week without missing any, is really, really difficult. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of discipline, and it takes a lot of work. And when you're first starting out and you have zero audience, I had zero credibility online in terms of a podcast. I mean, I obviously had digital products, but it isn't like that market automatically came over to my podcast and I started out of the gate. If you're a celebrity and you start a podcast, no offense, but the fact is it's easier for you because you have a built-in audience, right? If you're someone who already has an audience that's built in somewhere for you, well, that's easier. It's easy to be motivated to do it because as soon as you start it, it's going to take off. But if you're a normal person like me and you start one, you've got to work it and work it and work it. And in the beginning, no one's listening. No one cares and no one knows who you are. So it's a lot of work to do that day and day and day and day. But the beautiful thing about it is by taking action and doing that, once my audience started to grow and once more and more people started to listen, it's motivating. It builds momentum. You know what I mean? Now I'm excited every day because I know there's a lot of people that are benefiting from it. I know there are a lot of people that are tuning in and want to hear, whatever stuff that I can share. And that's really exciting. That momentum builds on itself and then you continue to roll with that. So that's one huge benefit of taking action. Another one is that it's motivational, right? Same thing. It's a lot more motivational. It's a lot easier to get up and do episodes when you know that people are listening. But even on a simpler basis, okay? Even if we're not at a point where we're doing something at that level yet. My gym workouts, right? So some days I wake up and I'm excited and I want to go to the gym, and nothing would keep me out of there anyway. And that's great, but those days are easy, right? Those days are not difficult because you want to do it. But there are those other days where you get up and you're a little groggy. You feel like you got a lot of work to do. There's a lot of other stuff. You got to wrangle the kids. You got to do all these other things. You're just not really feeling it. A little soreness in my shoulder. I don't know if I feel like going today. Those are the days where it's most important to go. Because when you go, what ends up happening is you get motivated. No matter how I feel when I go into the gym to start my workout, by the time I get out of the gym, I'm so glad I went. I feel motivated and pumped. I'm ready to get going with my workday, even though I thought I was going to be exhausted. And by the way, this happens to be later in the day. I've happened to be working out with my son, who's in high school right now at the current time. So I don't go in the mornings right now. I'm actually going mid-afternoon. So, it's that doldrummy time. A lot of days I pick him up from school. I don't really feel like going. I'm not in the mood. But I go because I have a commitment to him too, and we go. And once I start working out, I feel great. I get back home and I'm ready to rock and roll and keep on with my day. So it's motivational when we take action, right? That momentum and that motivation, it breeds more motivation. The other great thing about taking action is that it helps us to learn on the fly, right? So this is the digital business here and the podcast are excellent examples of this. When I started out my digital business, I didn't know a lot. I knew enough to be dangerous to get started, and that was it. So I just started doing what I knew. And I knew there was a lot I didn't know. I knew there were a lot of people doing it at a much higher level. And I knew that I was going to want to get to that level, but I also knew the only way past something is through it, right? So the only way to get to a point where I was going to be able to build a digital business that I could be proud of, that could be full-time income, that could be profitable, and that I'd be happy to do every single day was to get started. That's never the fun part. That's always the hard part. Back in high school, I actually was a track and field guy, and I threw javelin in high school and in college. But I'll never forget my first day learning to throw javelin. I was actually on the track team, and I initially started out as a sprinter. And the coach came over to me and he said, "Come with me." And I was like, uh-oh, he's going to bring me over to long distance because I had also run cross country. I was terrible at cross country. I never liked it. I never quite understood the guys that can handle it. Super nice group of people, but you got to have a screw loose, in my opinion, to want to run long distance. At any rate, I wasn't very good at that. So I thought he knew my background and was going to bring me over to distance. But instead, he looked at my build and he realized that I was in the gym all the time. So he actually brought me over to the throwers, which I had never even considered doing. And he said, "You know what? Here's a couple of throwing events. Learn these and see what you like the best." Best decision, best advice I ever got. So thank you, Mr. Mooney. Because what I did was I picked up the javelin and I started to learn how to throw it. And unlike what you see in the movies or what most people think, you don't actually hold it like a spear. You actually hold it like a V with it between your fingers, and it's a flipping motion, not actually a throwing motion. Anyway, the point is, when I was learning to throw javelin, we had a home meet that day. The girls had a home meet, and the South Windsor girls were in town. And I'll never forget this because I remember picking up the javelin and thinking to myself, all these other guys on my team know how to throw it. I look like an idiot because I don't even know the form. I don't know what I'm doing. I can't throw it more than a couple inches. There are all these girls, I'm a high school boy. Like, I don't want to look bad. So I thought to myself, and the thought ran through my head, maybe I should just wait till tomorrow to start. Because if I wait till tomorrow, right, no one will be here. It'll just be a practice for both teams. I don't need to worry about it. And then another thought shot through my head, and it was, if I start today, I'll never look as bad again as I do today. But if I don't start, I'm never going to get better. So I sucked it up and I dealt with the idea that maybe people were going to look at me and laugh or think that I sucked at this or whatever, but I was going to do it anyway. And so I picked it up and I started doing it. Long story short, a year later, I'm winning my meets. I go to states. I ended up throwing javelin in college, and on and on and on. And so the great thing about that is It all starts with that single step, right? A journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. And while it's maybe a little bit corny, it's absolutely true. So learning on the fly is a great thing and a great sort of benefit from taking action. Another one, plain and simple, it makes you feel good, right? I mean, when I got out of the gym and I took action and I did it, I feel good. When I try to learn something new and I just start doing it and I get some result, even if it's not the one I want, I feel good. I'm kind of proud of myself, right? Because I took action, I did something. So even though, yeah, I wasn't very good at it, at least I'm starting, at least I'm doing it. So it makes you feel good. There's a positive like endorphins effect from taking action and doing stuff. It can also raise your self-esteem because we feel good about the fact that we're taking action, about the fact that we took the risk or we did the thing we needed to do. Or maybe we dealt with our uncertainty and our sort of like fear and lack of ability to do something and did it anyway. That helps raise our own self-esteem. We feel better about ourselves and it grows our confidence and our belief, right? Once you start to do something, you're like, hey, wait a minute. I'm actually not that bad at that. And you get something and you start to build a little bit and it starts to work. It builds your confidence. It makes you feel better and better and better. I mean, do you think that, Michael Jordan, the very first time he ever picked up a basketball and shot it, he drained a 30-foot three-pointer? Of course not. He missed it, he struggled, whatever. But once he saw the ball starting to go in, he started to say, hey, you know what? I'm actually pretty good at this. And he got better and better and better. He grew his confidence, he grew his belief, and obviously that kept him going training. And obviously now he's become arguably, I suppose, the best player in basketball history. So there you go. And I mean, that's a super important thing. Another thing taking action can do for us, real simple, is change our perspective. My wife's grandmother, lovely Grandma Winnie, gotta love her. She lived to 104 years old and just passed away recently. And as my wife would say, one of the strongest women she's ever known. Went through more loss and more trials and tribulation in her life than most people ever have a right to, and always bore it with super grace and dignity and everything else. But one of the things that the story they used to always tell me about her, she had 3 kids, and one of the things, the stories that her kids and my wife would tell me about her, is that when they were feeling down or they were feeling depressed or they were feeling bored or whatever, or complaining, her favorite saying was, pick up a broom. Because her belief was, if you just get moving, if you just start doing something, all of a sudden it changes your perspective. And it's totally true. It's simple and it's like old school advice, but the reality of it is there's truth to it. There's a gold nugget in there. Because when you do pick up a broom, when you do get moving, whatever that is, when you do take action, it makes a difference. It changes your entire perspective. It changes your mind frame, changes your mindset, changes your emotional state, changes the way that you feel and the way that you react and interact with everybody. So that is all super important. It also builds competence, right, when you take action. Think of Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison, right? The inventor of the light bulb, as people say. It's actually the carbon filament, but we're splitting hairs. The fact of the matter is, the guy invented modern electric lights. And, he had filled notebooks with all of these attempts that he did, taking action that didn't work. And a young reporter asked him one time when he was interviewing, Mr. Edison, when are you going to give up on this stupid idea? Like it's never, can't you see? You failed over 10,000 times here. And you have notebooks full of all these failures. And he looked at the young reporter and he said, you don't understand. I haven't failed. I've successfully identified 10,000 ways that won't work, which brings me exactly 10,000 ways closer to the one that will. It's exactly the same thing. Colonel Sanders with the, Kentucky Fried Chicken, driving around restaurant after restaurant, eventually got to a point where he, has become a household name because this guy drove around in his beat up car with a chicken recipe and he took action and did what he needed to do. And now everybody in the world knows his name. And so, these are all examples, and while they might be dramatic ones, they're actual examples of people that took action and got a result out of that. We build competence, we build confidence. All of these things are benefits. And we also set the universe in motion. Like the butterfly effect itself, things happen outside of our purview that we aren't even aware of when we start to take action and do things. And everything starts churning and moving in the direction that we want it to go when we start to take that action. So while it's simple, it's super, super important. So the takeaway is that taking action might seem like a simple, low-level thing that's common sense, but actually, it's far more profound because it has the power to literally transform us, our feelings and emotions, our sense of self-worth, our confidence, our abilities, and of course, our results and our accomplishments. When we're feeling stuck or unsure about something, taking action is the quickest way to break through that. Because whether the action itself gets us through it or the act of taking action leads us to new revelations, either way, we're moving forward toward our goals.